Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Last Christmas I did a video covering Christmas horror movies. Some of them were okay, but most of them just plain sucked. Well, it got me thinking. I wonder if there are any Easter horror movies. And if they did exist, would they be any good? Well, that's what I want to find out today. For whatever reason, creepy bunnies have been showing up in films forever. One of the most iconic examples of this is easily Frank from Donnie Darko, the strange masked rabbit that only Donnie can see. There's also that scene in the Twilight movie as part of the Good Life segment when the huge mutant rabbit pops out of a top hat in all of its 80s practical effect glory. There's this really weird scene in the film Sexy Beast featuring a humanoid rabbit with a damn gun. And I can't make this video without mentioning the killer bunny from the Holy Grail. But while those are all creepy killer rabbits, the films themselves aren't centered around Easter or the bunnies. They're just parts of a bigger or separate plot. So I searched the darkest and shittiest parts of the horror film catalog for Easter bunny horror flicks, and I found some of the most bizarre, messed up, and honestly worst horror films I've ever seen. An entire subgenre of bunny-themed horror that I can't say I'd recommend anyone actually watch. Let's take a peek at them. Starting with Bunnyman. Bunnyman is one of the weirdest on the list, mostly because unlike a lot of these entries, it really seems like it's taking itself seriously. Now that's easier to do because the Bunnyman in this film is actually just a man in a suit, as opposed to a mutant rabbit or something, so that brings it a little bit back into reality. The start of the movie is just an 8mm snuff film of a woman being chased down and stabbed. I don't know if they used an actual old camera for this or just effects, but either way, this segment is actually kinda cool. Unfortunately, I don't think I can say the same for the rest of the movie. It follows a group of college kids who are on a road trip in the middle of nowhere when they run into an obnoxious driver in a large truck who tries running them off the road several times. For whatever reason, this scene just keeps going. I'm not kidding, it's almost 15 minutes before they finally pull off the side of the road to confront the truck driver. So they come up with the idea that they should send one of the girls out to calm the truck driver down, you know, because she's hot, I guess? I don't know. But instead she just gets hit with the door, which is kind of hilarious, and for whatever reason, no one gets out to help her. They just watch as she's being assaulted. So now the truck drives off, and we finally find out who the bunny driver is. Bunnyman, who else? He actually has a woman in the back of his truck and uses a chain to split her in half. And thank God, because something needs to happen, I mean, come on. So we get back to the group of friends whose car is broken down and one dude's trying to fix it when Bunnyman shows back up in his truck again and runs into the car, scaring everybody and killing the dude under the car. Unfortunately, after this, we get to the slowest section of the movie, which is just the group wandering around the woods. This goes on for like 20 minutes, and we finally get to something interesting when Bunny kidnaps one of the women and we see where he lives, which is this really creepy Jason Voorhees kind of shack in the woods. What's weirder is that there's this mentally handicapped fella chained up in the shack who starts dry humping the lady at one point. Eventually we meet Bunnyman's family, who are all psycho cannibals, and this is where the film feels completely inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There even seems to be a direct nod to it, with one of the characters looking like the hitchhiker from Texas Chainsaw, even down to the hand injury. Eventually it comes down to only one couple who trick the Bunnyman and stab him in the neck with a pair of scissors before escaping in his truck. There is one scene where we actually see Bunnyman's face, which is hideously disfigured, and it seems to me that the character's motivations, or lack thereof, are based on Michael Myers because of the fact that he doesn't speak and seems to kill just out of pure evil. Plus, Bunnyman's real name is literally Michael. The movie closes out with another 8mm tape, which is just eerie. It might surprise you to know that this movie actually got a sequel. Two of them. Bunnyman Resurrection and Bunnyman Vengeance. Yeah, these actually exist. There's definitely better production all around on these second two films, but it's still the same kind of thing, the Bunnyman killing people for seemingly no reason. Next, let's take a look at the Easter Bunny Massacre. This movie is a bad combination of low budget and boring. I wish I could put it in the so bad it's good category, but it unfortunately doesn't quite hit the mark, mostly because of the large gap between the kills. The basic premise is that a group of young people go on a camping trip where they take drugs and party, but when they awake the next morning they find a corpse. After arguing over who did it, they finally just bury the body and decide to keep the whole thing a secret. Sorta like I Know What You Did Last Summer. 1 year later, they're all invited to an Easter party by an anonymous note and are then killed off one by one at the party by a killer in a bunny mask. Like I said, my biggest problem with this movie is the less than stellar kills and the fact that they're just so few and far between. Obviously, it starts to ramp up by the end, but the first kill happens in the first 10 minutes of the movie and the next kill happens almost an hour later. Sorry, but for a slasher film, there should be a steady slaughter stream, or at least some interesting character interactions. I will give the movie this: there is a really unexpected kill that caught me so off guard that I actually started to laugh.
They were just messing with us.
That's brilliant. In that case, I'm gonna go, so...
I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just funny. I wish I had more to say, but other than that scene, the movie just really isn't that interesting. Night of the Lepus. This is one of the most absurd films on the list, but it's probably the one film that's most directly related to rabbit horror. Lepus is just a Latin word for rabbit, but I guess they thought that Night of the Rabbits didn't sound as scary. The movie's a schlocky 70s monster movie. The idea is that a researcher is attempting to alter the breeding habits of rabbits and accidentally creates a serum that causes them to grow massively, or something like that. It's pretty lackluster altogether, but I will say I love anything with miniature sets and models, and that's exactly what they do in this to make the rabbits look huge, which doesn't look half bad considering how goofy it is. It's a wacky concept and a fun one to secretly put on at an Easter family get-together. Let's look at Beaster Day, Here Comes Peter Cottonhell. Yeah, that's the title. This is the most blatant comedy horror out of the bunch, and honestly, a lot of the time it feels like a bad comedy from 1998 or something.
I should have worn a condom, the little shit.
It's just chock full of bad jokes left, right, and center. The basic idea is that there's a towering bunny creature terrorizing a town by killing off its residents one by one, although like 90% of the time it seems to attack naked women. These scenes are still pretty entertaining, mostly because of the strange ADR screaming that comes in from time to time. There's kind of a story in the form of a pair of dog catchers who figure out about the Beaster Bunny and attempt to warn everyone, but the hippie mayor keeps trying to cover it all up. We'll get more into the characters in a minute, but first things first, the bunny. From what I can tell, and I'm no shitty special effects expert, the bunny's just a marionette puppet that's green screened into the scenes. It looks ridiculous, but I suppose that's the point. Sometimes the Beaster Bunny will just grab someone in its jaws and shake them around, and there's something about the way it moves, it just reminds me of a 2000s Flash video or something. It really made me giggle if I'm being honest. So I mentioned there is an actual story going on between kills, mostly following two young dog catchers. A total goofball guy whose introduction scene shows him stuffing socks in his pants, which feels right out of an American Pie movie but worse, and a young woman who's desperate for a job and joins the team. Most of the movie from here is the guy trying hard and failing to get the girl, while the sleazeball mayor is secretly trying to hide the Beaster Bunny kills. I wish I could say there was more to it, but that's pretty much it, except for the fact that every scene is just full of constant gags.
Once men started marrying men, that was it. It wasn't meteors that killed the dinosaur. They all turned gay.
In this way, it kind of reminds me of a trauma film like Toxic Avenger or Nuke 'Em High, which is a compliment, but everything about this movie is bad for the sake of being bad. If you accept that, then the movie is fine for what it is. It's one of those movies where you get your buddies together and bullshit while you watch it for a laugh. Holidays. Holidays is a pretty wild anthology film consisting of several segments themed around different holidays. Obviously, we're going to be covering the Easter segment here, and it's probably the most insane, or at least took me the most by surprise. It follows a young girl named Heidi who's struggling with the concept of Easter. She's afraid of the story of Jesus coming back from the dead and doesn't understand what the Easter Bunny has to do with anything. Well, the night before Easter morning, Heidi gets up to grab a glass of water, and what she encounters is one of the most creative and disturbing depictions of the Easter Bunny put to film. I don't even know how to describe this, but it's essentially the body of Jesus Christ post-crucifixion, bearing the crown of thorns and everything. But its face is that of a grotesque fleshy bunny. It extends its hands, which have the holes from the nails on the cross, and a baby chick crawls out of the hole. Ugh. It catches Heidi before she can get back to her room, and simply says, "Touch me," making her touch the holes in his hand, and then, and this is one of the most unsettling things I've seen lately, he puts her finger into the wound where he was pierced during the crucifixion. In case anyone is completely confused as to what the fuck is happening here, this is a direct reference to the Gospels when Christ reveals himself to his disciples and they don't believe him. His disciple Thomas insists that he feels the holes in Christ's hands and put his hand in the wound on his side. Anyway, what is this, Grief Sunday School class? The point is that this is disturbing enough in the actual Bible, but even more twisted, acted out upon a little girl. It's kind of genius in a nightmare kind of way. So now the Easter Bunny declares that no child has actually seen him before and that Heidi must take his place. He puts his hand on her head and starts speaking gibberish under his breath. Then we see Heidi's shadow as it transforms, growing rabbit ears on her head. I have to say, as absurd as it is, I think this segment is awesome, and it's probably the best thing on this list, all things considered. But don't worry, we've still got Bunny the Killer Thing, and I've saved the best for last. By best for last, I mean the most batshit crazy movie concerning a killer rabbit I've ever heard of. The film starts with a mad scientist type guy injecting a strange serum into a man against his will. Well, the man ends up breaking loose and escaping, although it seems something is wrong with him. His body begins to change and, well, you can see where this is going. Meanwhile, we meet a group of young people who are all meeting up to party, and besides some minor drama between these characters, there's not much of a story here. But whatever, I prefer it that way in these types of movies. I just want to see some carnage, man. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, okay, this is just going to be a typical slasher film, but with like a were-rabbit doing the killings. Well, you're half right. The man does turn into a man-rabbit humanoid, but he's not out for blood. He's out for... yeah. All this horny rabbit wants is some tang. Not only that, but he has a massive boner, and his signature move is gripping it at the base and spinning it around like a helicopter blade. I'm not even kidding, that's really the premise of this movie, and it's brutal too. He slaughters whoever gets in his way. I mean, there's a list of crazy stuff that happens that unfortunately I probably can't show without the video getting taken off YouTube, but let me just give you an overview. At one point, a man loses his eyeball, and the bunny thing has his way with the eye socket. The bunny eats a woman out, and I mean, he literally eats her. And that's not the only genital eating, because he also bites a guy's pee-pee off and spits it out in slow motion. What the fuck is this movie? The weirdest thing about this is that the movie's shot really well, or at least way better than most of the other movies I've covered so far. It sort of follows a typical slasher formula. Eventually there's only a few survivors left, and they finally decide just to fight back. And fight back they do. Spoiler alert, but they kill the bunny thing when one of the survivors rips his dong off and beats the shit out of him with it before stabbing him in the face with it. This far into the movie, I'm no longer shocked by anything. I'm just laughing my ass off and cheering this girl on. So at this point you would think, well, they took the monster out, that's it, that's all she wrote, we'll see you in Bunny the Killer Thing too. But you would be wrong. You would be very, very wrong. Because somehow the last 15 minutes of this movie, things get even more insane. The 3 remaining survivors are kidnapped by the people who originally created the monster and are taken back to the scientists to be turned into bunny things themselves. Everything after this just happens so fast that it feels like some kind of messed up fever dream or something. Starting when one of the hostages gets his eyeball punched out of his head and then uses that eyeball by wrapping it around the head of the guy who punched him and throwing him to the ground. They use this as an opportunity to escape, where they kill their captors. They then open the door to the rest of the warehouse where they see a bizarre kind of orgy going on with a group of men having sex with more rabbit monsters, revealing the true purpose behind creating the monsters was for the fetishes of clients who pay to use them. Well, they take one look at this abomination and just lay waste to all these creeps before escaping. And that is the true ending to this film. I can't take it anymore. These movies, they're making me question reality. What if I've slipped into some kind of alternate timeline where these weird movies exist? Or this is some kind of giant simulation and the godlike overseers are adding bizarre creations to make me question all of it? I mean, maybe none of this is real. Nah, it's probably just a bunch of shitty, low-budget Easter horror movies that are capitalizing on a holiday in order to make more money. Anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. It's the type of content that has a low chance of being monetized and a high chance of being age-restricted, so big shout out to my Patreon supporters, Soma, Naomi Romero, and Krusty the Crab. You guys are awesome, and it really goes a long way into helping me improve the channel, so thank you for that. If you want a shout out like that at the end of every video, as well as a bunch of other bonus content, check out my Patreon, the link is below. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching at all, so thank you. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.